Robert David Steele has a new book out looking at were some of these latest Islamic attacks false flags. Well, they're false flags, and they were brought in, protected, and allowed to do it. But does it go beyond that? I mean, I asked the question, how could there be attacks and then the government that brings them in not get in trouble? That's a suspension of logic. Another French false flag, bloody tracks from Paris to San Bernardino, a new book out by Mr. Steele. We'll get to that at the bottom of the hour. There's so much I want to get into him with the whole election, what's happening in the world, the factions. Let me ask you this, Robert. First, it's good to have you back with us.
Oh, Alex, it's always a treat to be on your show.
Before we go all over the map here, you were an actual field guy, in a lot of combat operations, a lot of intelligence gathering operations all over the Middle East, all over the world. So you actually are one of those maybe 5, 6, 7%, if I'm wrong, correct me, of the CIA that's actually out there in the field. What do you think about 13 hours? I mean, obviously there was a stand down. What do you think about Benghazi? And then pulling back then, who are the factions best you can tell? I mean, we know it's the Army at the Pentagon against the Navy, but then the Pentagon overall against the CIA, allied with the Defense Intelligence Agency, and then another 14 agencies jockeying for who they're with, who's the NSA
Yes.
with. I mean, I've got a lot of good sources, you do too, and they say they can't even figure out who's who now, and that it's so corrupt, it's all just about looting and getting funding, and that basically we've been captured by corruption, not some foreign power, but just by the fact that every agency now is just growing like a bloated tick hanging on the near carcass of the West.
Well, Alex, I was one of the first case officers assigned the terrorist target full time in the 1980s, and I've actually organized a false flag for the CIA. I mean, I know how this is done. I know we do it.
Whoa. You never... Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to skip this network break. This is so incredible. First, break that down. Get into the... What you...
Look, a false flag, and there are many different kinds of false flags. Mine didn't kill anybody. But a false flag is basically where you simulate a whole chain of events and you basically blame it on someone else. But it has a desired outcome that is in your favor, even if it has nothing to do with ethics or reality.
Sure, if you can't tell us the classified false flag you carried out, can you give us an example of something else that happened like it?
Well, how about 9/11? How about Charlie Hebdo in Paris? How about this most recent Paris event in which multiple witnesses identified white, blue-eyed paramilitary guys actually doing the shooting? San Bernardino, on national television in the United States.
2 different witnesses said exactly the same thing.
Alex, you and I are on the same wavelength here. I mean, I really get upset with the fact that most Americans are so out of touch with reality because they get their news from mainstream media, including Rachel Maddow, who has no clue what the actual unemployment rate is in the United States. And so our citizens are basically underinformed or misinformed. But there's no question. And by the way, this wonderful book that you mentioned, this was edited by Keith Barrett. And I'm one of about 50 authors in there, including Craig Roberts and Phil Giraldi, two of my heroes. There's no question but that San Bernardino and both attacks in Paris were false flags. And they're basically doing to France what was done by NATO Gladio to Italy in the 1960s.
Now, that's leaked in Italian courts. The Italian president's gone public. They're head of their Supreme Court. That's one of the most documented false flag chains ever, other than the Israelis.
So, Alex, you're right. And so is the assassination of John F. Kennedy. It's now known that Allen Dulles was a massive traitor who single-handedly saved Nazism and promoted fascism in Japan and Italy and Germany, brought the Nazi Hydra to the United States, helped the Nazis move their empire to Argentina and all of their gold and so forth. So what we have in the United States today is financial, religious, and ideological traitors. And I totally support the governor of Texas with his call for a constitutional convention. And I believe that the next president has to be elected on a platform of both committing to a constitutional convention, if we can get 34 states to ask for it right away, and also electoral reform.
Sir, I want to walk through all that with you, but you've never dropped so many bombshells here. You organized a false flag. These are false flags. the Nazi gold to Argentina. A lot of that's been declassified. The public doesn't know it. Of course, they know where to hunt Hitler. They know where he was living. My grandfather, lived in Texas, and there were just Nazis all over the place. When he would go on military bases after World War II, he was angry about it because they'd shoot their mouths off, and were very arrogant, and he'd had a lot of buddies die. But I just don't think people understand that it's not even a Nazi conspiracy. It's that it's a Nazi system of covert operations that basically was grafted in, 36,000 of them as officers, into academia, into science, into weapons manufacturing, into NASA, into everything, and that's what we see today. So, of course, we've got poison water in Flint, Michigan.
Well, it's not just here. Germany has been a vassal state of the United States since World War II, and Angela Merkel is one of the people that has been funded and promoted by the United States for a very long time, and she came out of East Germany. The bottom line here is we cannot trust the U.S. government. And by the way, there's no such thing as a monolithic U.S. government. There are millions of very good people trapped in a very bad system. And you talked about Benghazi. I've got a master post at Phi Beta Iota on Benghazi and the timeline and so forth. There are no fewer than 7 U.S. foreign policies. And in Benghazi, what you had was a CIA operation to destabilize the entire region that Hillary Clinton was actively supporting in violation of the Constitution without congressional authority. She let an ambassador die because of her irresponsibility. However, Leon Panetta is the guy who gave the no-go order. Leon Panetta is a chicken shit with no balls, and he overturned his military advisors, including the commander for AFRICOM, who could have saved everybody in Benghazi. For me, this was Panetta's first great act of treason. His second was the fake bin Laden attack, which killed a number of SEALs to kill a patsy that was not bin Laden, that was put into place by Pakistan as a favor to the U.S. government. And there are some tremendous journalists out there. I cannot name them right now because they told me in confidence, but we have Pakistani sources that have confirmed that the fake bin Laden was provided by them, and Leon Panetta probably knew that.
And of course, it was right by their West Point, and the word I've been told by SEAL families and SEALs, and this was the week that it happened. I mean, I got really scared having this info, obviously, because it was so dangerous, so I got it out immediately. That they had a body double there, and that's basically what happened. That's why they then sent 20-something of them in a helicopter to a non-mission. They knew they were being set up, blew it up, and now I've even had some of those SEAL families on the show since then. But let me tell you, it's creepy when you meet with a Navy SEAL or you meet with their family a week after it happens. We've known from the beginning what happened here. And you talk about Hillary's incompetence. As you said, though, CIA on record with the stand down, they now have this guy named Bob, the supposed section chief, saying that this new movie, 13 Hours, is wrong about a stand down. We have the witnesses that were on the ground on the radio getting the stand down order who worked for the CIA. They were ordered, and they go on Fox News with Megyn Kelly and say, no, we got the order from the CIA not to go.
It's not just the CIA, it's everybody, including Hillary Clinton. I mean, if you look at my timeline, which was developed by a whole bunch of experts, we basically knew 7 to 9 hours in advance that Benghazi was going down. And fast movers with tankers were 2 hours away. Troops, the counterterrorism team in Spain were 2 hours away. There is no question but that...
Weren't there jets 20 minutes away?
No, 2 hours.
I mean, jets were about 20 of those, is what I've read.
I don't know, because jets use a lot of fuel, and if you launch jets from Turkey and these other places, you've really got to refuel them. Oh. There are other complications, but let's say 1 to 2 hours was the window. We held off for 7 hours.
Now, knowing what you know as a CIA former guy that ran operations on the ground, how many people do you think, because we know there were Predator drones above it, how many people knew it was a lie?
About Benghazi?
Yes, sir. Day one.
Well, it depends. Part of the problem we have is that the CIA lies to the Pentagon and the Pentagon lies to CIA, and everybody lies to the Department of State and the White House. So we have a government in which we literally lie among ourselves. It's internal warfare. And one of the problems with Libya, of course, was also the French activism, because the French wanted to take out Gaddafi. They wanted to put themselves into power there. Gaddafi was actually a stabilizing factor in the region. And his biggest crime was that he had a lot of gold and he wasn't going to follow the American Goldman Sachs, George Soros party line. So we literally created a swath of destruction from Afghanistan through Libya, Iraq, Syria, all the way down to Yemen, Somalia, and Niger. What we have done in the last 15 to 20 years is go from 25 failed states to 175 failed states. The U.S. government, in our name and at our expense, has destroyed the world, and it has destroyed the American domestic economy, and nobody is holding anyone.
That was my next point. And I mean, clearly you were high-level CIA on the ground. You know about divide and conquer strategies, force multiplication. You can just see the State Department sociology with political correctness dividing everyone. I mean, it's like Ku Klux Klan propaganda, but through the minorities. It's so evil. It even shocks me that they are race baiting and creating division like this, federalizing police, weaponizing them, then the cops do bad stuff. Then the answer is bring in more tyranny. What's your view on all that? What's really happening in the economy, where we're going?
Well, it's funny because I just watched Cynthia McKinney speaking on a Russian TV channel, and she was talking about change management and chaos management. And you're exactly right, Alex. Basically, we're destabilizing the world. We're creating massive amounts of fear. And we're spending all of our money on surveillance and control. And I have a slide from Medard Gabel on how much we spend on war and how if we spent a third of that on peace, we could give every single person on the planet a two-story cinder block home with running water, electricity, and even a swimming pool. The injustice that is being perpetuated right now, we now know that 62 people on the planet have as much wealth as the lower 3 billion. This is insane. Concentration of wealth, and I have you've showed it on your show before, my preconditions of revolution chart. The preconditions of revolution all exist in the United States of America today. We are like a house that has been soaked in gasoline with ammunition put in every room, and we're just waiting for the first match to blow by.
And George Soros is running around with sparklers in the street. And expanding on this, sir, then I come out and say we don't need class warfare, we don't need class envy, but it's the very Davos elites that have transferred the wealth through inside jobs, through crony capitalism, that are lobbying to now take what's left, the middle class money, and redistribute it, which will end the ladder up for poor people and terminate it using social injustice causes to actually sabotage people coming together. How do you communicate that to the masses of people that are at the breaking point? How do we keep the establishment from organizing a false revolution that only cements their control?
Alex, I am a huge fan of Ted Cruz and state rights. I think that it's time for the states to look after their own. It's time for us to start nullifying federal regulations. It's time for us to say that the federal government has no right to own land. There's an absolutely marvelous graphic on how much land the federal government owns. They basically own everything west of the Mississippi, and that's a crime against
humanity. So what do we do? I mean, we get a coalition of governors and legislatures in an emergency, just like 1775, 1776. We get together, we announce the crimes, we point out the feds have been hijacked, we deploy a plan to the states, they vote, we pull out the federal government, dissolve it, and then how do we reconstitute it? Because you've got all these operatives in there. There'll be a huge battle over the next level of control that causes a revolution in and of itself.
Look, one of the beautiful things about being a state is that you have the National Guard, which works for the governor, not for the president.
You already have the infrastructure.
Yes, you can take over your land. I personally don't believe we should have absentee landlords. I think every state should control its own land, its own property.
By the way, I agree with what you're saying. I'm just putting in the pitfalls of how we need to organize this, and it needs to happen through the states.
I'm huge on truth and reconciliation. And let me point out to you and your listeners that there are some billionaires that get it. Lady Lynn Rothschild, who's a babe from New Jersey, by the way, she just married well. Lady Lynn Rothschild sponsored a conference on inclusive capitalism in May of 2014. And we've got some black sheep billionaires out in Silicon Valley who are talking about redemptive
I know
capitalism.
that. I've talked to some of them, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Stay there.
So
Let's talk about that when we come back. There are a lot of new money people, is what you're getting
yes.
at, and who don't want to suicide everybody and have this apocalyptic craziness. But the elite are digging in. They're planning it. Mr. Steele, sorry?
We can fix this, Alex. You, me, and the governor of Texas.
RobertDavidSteele.com. Well, the governor listens a lot, so you can tell him what you think straight ahead. We'll be back. It's definitely a very exciting time to be alive. We're going back to our guest, Robert David Steele, here in a moment. I want to take a few calls for him. I'm going to be good and go to him. I'm bad about getting a guest on, not going to the calls. For your questions, your comments, 800-259-9231 for first-time callers, 800-259-9231. Briefly, so I want to get right back to our guest. We're listener-supported, viewer-supported. We don't get big, globalist advertisers. We don't get banker bailout money like MSNBC or NPR. We are supported by the products we sell. So, we try to sell really good products at very competitive prices. We try to have a wide selection. When you shop with the good guys, you're funding an organization that's promoting true Americana. And you know what? We built it. People have come. We reach 28 million people a week now worldwide. About half of our audience is outside the U.S. I love that. But it's the audience inside the United States that mainly finances what we do. And if you've not become a Nightly News subscriber for $5.95 a month at prisonplanet.tv or InfoWarsNews.com, you really should check out the benefits and do that. We're always telling you, you should look online for water testing in your county or your city and find out what's being added, what's being done. Because of federal laws and state laws, it's there. And, man, they take perfect aquifer water in many areas of the country and just put hundreds of horrible things in it. What you see happening up in Flint, they should all be filtering their water. There should be a nationwide move, to have the government, airlift that in. But you see, there's so many scams to water, I'm not going to go off into it. I went into it in the last hour. You need to be filtering your shower water. You need to be filtering your tap water. Reverse osmosis is great. Then you got to take mineral supplements because it takes out all the minerals. If you take some of the other type of water like distilled, it'll kill you, in 6 months or so. I mean, I know people that are drinking that for just 2 weeks and, gotten really sick because there's nothing in that. Again, it's very important that you use the Alexa Pure Pro or you use the Pro Pure type systems that we sell that have been tested, that are high quality at InfoWarsStore.com. And that way you're getting high quality filters with the test on the site, the best we can find, very inexpensive for what you get. And then we've got the new Pro Pure Pro Max 4-stage filter that has fast flow and reduces or cuts out 200 contaminants plus from your shower water where you inhale them, where you go through your skin. It's the other part of the equation for your family. I mean, folks, if you want to be healthy, eat clean, non-GMO food, all the rest, but water is just as important as clean air. I mean, if you don't have it, I mean, it's such an important factor. So get a high-quality Pro Pure system at InfoWarsStore.com. You can see the 5-star reviews and the other products. This is so new. There's no reviews there. So as soon as folks get these in, review them. I've been using mine in the test we did here at the office for months. I just put mine in last week at my house. I was like, I've had these for a week. I haven't put them in yet. So it's important to take action. InfoWarsStore.com. And then finally, InfoWarsLife.com. We have a new special running today. And just for the next week, get Survival Shield, Nascent Iodine, the Good Halogen, and get Super Male Vitality together for 15% off this week only. Such amazing products. Find out why those are so important as well at InfoWarsLife.com or InfoWarsStore.com. All right. Our guest, ladies and gentlemen, joins us, RobertDavidSteele.com. He has some other great websites as well. There is a new book out that he contributed to, Another French False Flag, Bloody Tracks from Paris to San Bernardino. I want to get into that some too, but you were getting into the fact that not everybody's a suicidal nihilist or eugenicist in the global combine. But I want to ask you, what is the main driving force in the main combines that get together at Bilderberg and Davos and kind of iron out their differences like a mafia summit every year? And then what are some of these factions you're saying that don't want to bring us into the new dark age?
Well, Alex, basically, I think, Animal Farm was a great book. I think the ultra elite, which certainly leans toward neo-Nazi and even satanic influences, they think of us as expendable farm animals. We're nothing to them. And they basically see profit from war as good. And they even like disease because the CDC is a massive scam. Most of these vaccines and most of these pharmaceuticals that we're pushing off and most of the stuff that we sell on supermarket shelves is just plain poison, but it's profitable poison. So we're treated as a money machine. Now, the good news is that a few of the billionaires, Lady Lynn Rothschild, the Black Sheep billionaires, the Mars family in Virginia, a couple of others, maybe Michael Bloomberg in New York City, they're starting to understand that the blue-collar master class, the white-collar cubicle class, and the academic gold-collar class are the golden goose. That's the heart of productivity. And they're starting to realize that they're getting very close to having people burning down their mansions. And we have a lot of angry veterans that know how to put a 50 caliber bullet into a Lear jet that's taking off and landing. So we're very, very close to an extraordinarily unstable situation. So I sent a certified letter to the governor of Texas. I hope he actually gets it, urging him to convene an electoral reform summit and to call for a virtual constitutional convention. One of the guys I admire besides yourself is Mike Levin and his radio show and his books on liberty and the Constitutional Convention and so forth. I think Texas should sponsor a virtual constitutional convention no later than March. We need to get all these issues out. And we need to understand just how vulnerable the United States is to complete meltdown.
Please continue.
Well, I mean, I've actually produced a list of 7 things, and I personally, I'm a little concerned about Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. And if it comes down to Trump or Clinton, I think Michael Bloomberg is going to have to run for president.
I get that Bloomberg takes the Henry Ford position that you've got to have employees paid enough to buy your cars. And so he isn't pushing Agenda 21, but he's so anti-gun.
Yes, he's going to have to compromise on that. And politics is about compromise. I think one of the problems with people that are against guns is that they're living in an ivory tower.
Why do so many smart people like you that I agree with like 95% of, and people like Harry Dent like Bloomberg? Because, I mean, I just can't stand him. I mean, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's okay, Alex, because I would insist that you be his vice president. So you could be balancing,
right.
you could be a balancing factor here. Look, I'm agnostic on who's president. I really don't care. I just want my country back. I want my Constitution restored, and I want integrity back in the electoral system. We don't have that right now. We have a 2-party tyranny that is screwing 60% of the public. And I really believe that we need to find some combination, a bipartisan ticket, a Republican and a Democrat, a coalition cabinet. You know about fantasy football. I actually want to have a fantasy cabinet.
No, I understand. I mean, look, a con's the way to go, and I was never for one, but the Constitution's already so gone. Why not an emergency point when the states are already on our side to actually go in there and get the federal government back in line? That's the type of platform bully pulpit that would allow all this. But getting past the fantasy football, obviously, I mean, Hillary's terrible. What is your issues with Donald Trump? I'd love to hear those.
Well, I actually published an article in Counterpunch, Countercoup, How Donald Trump Can Win. And I outlined these 7 ideas, and I was completely blown off by Donald Trump and his staff. The big problem with Trump, in my view, is that he's me, me, me. Donald Trump is all about Donald Trump. He does not give a shit about the rest of us.
Mr. Steele, we're on a lot of AM and FM stations. We're able to catch that, but please.
I apologize.
No, I know you're used to Europe and stuff where people can say whatever they want.
Does not care about the rest of us. One of the big mistakes that he's making is he thinks he can get away with just himself and what he knows. Jim Webb has the same problem when Jim Webb says that he's his own national security advisor. That is a sign of my effort to help Trump.
What do you make of the former defense secretary Gates coming out? I don't even know if that's true, but and saying Obama calls everybody in and says, "I'm smarter than you. I can do my, all your jobs better."
Well, I agree. Look, see, part of the problem is ever since the assassination of John F. Kennedy, every president has been a puppet. From Jimmy Carter to Ronald Reagan, they've all been puppets. And they are all also on these massive ego trips. Chris Hedges has written a great book called Empire of Illusion, The Loss of Literacy and the Triumph of Spectacle. All of these presidents think that they're some kind of decider. They're not. The decisions are being made by Rockefeller and others in Wall Street and the City of London. And these guys are just extremely highly paid actors. Now, I think Trump has the power to win. If he were, for example, to take Cynthia McKinney as his vice president, a great woman of color from Georgia, and if he were to name a coalition cabinet and field a balanced budget and push electoral reform, I mean, one of the problems with every single senator running for president is that not a single one of them has been willing to introduce an electoral reform act in Congress.
You know, it's funny you say that because up until like the 30s and stuff, that's what used to happen is if somebody wanted to win, say they were a Democrat or Republican, they would end up taking one of the leaders from the other party in a coalition government and make them the vice president. Why doesn't that happen anymore?
That was constitutionally mandated. The runner-up became vice president.
Sure.
And we had the senators representing the states.
Exactly. So they got rid of that around the same time, too. For people that don't know, that's important. The state legislatures used to elect the senators, showing that state checkmate, that check.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's why I want a constitutional convention. And I'm telling you, Alex, if the governor of Texas will connect with Mike Levin and Sheldon Adelson, who I actually think is going to be a huge force in this election, one of the things that has to be settled before we have an election is Israel. Israel is the third rail in American politics. And I believe we have to have a constitutional convention. We have to have a Truth and Reconciliation meeting on Israel and Palestine. We have to make some decisions on how we're going to be not funding the Saudi Arabian sponsorship of terrorism and subsidizing.
Oh, yeah, let me ask you that question. Looking at this fog, is the U.S. really allied with the Saudis or the Iranians, or are they playing it off as a Sunni Shiite civil war?
Right now, I think the United States government is actively sponsoring ISIS as a destabilizing force.
So they're really not in the deal with Iran?
Well, you know, Iran is the adult in the neighborhood. I'm sorry, but I went to college with Iranian engineers, and those are some of the smartest guys on the planet. These are stable, sensible people, and those who are trying to...
I agree, and like 80% of them hate their government. How are these super smart people, as smart as they come, they invented chess, run by a bunch of, guys that have them living in caves? I mean, no,
Alex, ask yourself why we're run by a bunch of morons in Washington, okay? We're all abdicating our responsibility as citizens. We are all sitting by the wayside. I just had an exchange on LinkedIn with this guy that thinks Bernie Sanders is the cat's meow. I think Bernie Sanders is a fraud. Sanders is totally committed to the two-party tyranny, and nobody, including Rachel Maddow, wants to discuss the fact that the two-party tyranny has disenfranchised 60% of Americans, including all Latinos, all blacks, all women, and all youth.
All I know is Bernie Sanders doesn't talk about crony capitalism. He says capitalism's the problem. Our problem is crony capitalism.
Look, Bernie Sanders, actually, whether Donald Trump or Bernie Sanders or Ted Cruz, I would vote for anybody that agreed to restore integrity to our electoral process. Now, that's the other problem with Bernie Sanders is he wants to create a bigger government with more welfare and more government regulation and more government mandates. So he's really a light version. I've got a wonderful cartoon, which you've probably got around someplace, of this big bird with its claws on Capitol Hill. And one wing of the bird is red and one wing of the bird is blue. And the caption is one bird, two wings, same. and I'll spell it, Alex. I don't know.
No,
if I'm
don't
allowed
do
to
it.
say this
Same
word.
poop. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Let's go to some phone calls real quick. Let's go ahead and talk to John in New York. Go ahead. You're on the air with former CIA field commander Robert David Steele, robertdavidsteele.com.
Hiya, guys. I have in my hand here a piece of paper, a news release, and I'm wondering if this times in with a false flag in San Bernardino. And I'm wondering also if this is fuel for impeachment to get Mr. Obama out of office as promptly as possible. The article says here, nuclear plant shut down after 10 control rods accidentally fall into reactor core. That's enough to put United States out of business within 24 hours, caused by smoldering event. Fire brigade on scene. Incident of this type could lead to overheating, potentially resulting.
Where is this? Where is this? When did this happen?
This happened on December the 7th.
You know, that's the thing. They admit all these reactors are rotting, basically. There's all these disasters happening, and used to it be national news. Do the elite think radiation laws of nature have changed, Mr. Steele?
No, and part of my favorite word in the English language is integrity. Now, Chernobyl and Fukushima have taken us into new places. Fukushima is poisoning the entire Pacific Ocean, the entire West Coast. The federal government is now undermining all of its radiation control standards.
But Ann Coulter said the Japanese should thank them because it's good for you. I know.
Don't make me go there. Look, Alex, the bottom line here is that the entire U.S. culture has become a cheating culture. That's actually a title of a book.
That's it. It is.
We no longer stand for anything, whether it's New York values or Texas values.
And we lie to ourselves and think radiation won't hurt our kids.
Exactly right. Or vaccines or poisons on the supermarket. So here's the bottom line. We have got to convene a national conversation in which we focus on restoring the Constitution, which includes the runner-up as vice president and senators as representatives of the states. We have to demand that the federal stop owning land and stop taxing citizens. I actually think it's unconstitutional for the federal government to tax individual citizens. We are the United States of America.
Well, it is. It is until 1913. You're absolutely on target. And people have grown up in slavery so long, they don't even know that what we're saying is what made America so great.
Well, I can't say this enough times. The governor of Texas and Mike Levin and you and a few others have the power with Sheldon Adelson to bring us all together in a virtual constitutional convention, not an actual constitutional convention, but a virtual constitutional convention in March in Texas. Let's get all this on the table.
And again, even if it was just ceremonial, it would have so much attention to it as a debate. You can't lose because then it isn't even binding, but you started the first wave. The third hour is coming up. And then, of course, we have the fourth hour hosted by Anthony Gucciardi today, InfoWars Nightly News, 7 o'clock Central Standard Time this evening. And, of course, we have the weekend 4 to 6 p.m. Central radio show that I host, and I will be hosting that this weekend. David Knight and Leanne McAdoo will be in Flint, Michigan tomorrow, covering where they're trying to cause divide and conquer race stuff over the horrible poison water the government was feeding people, was giving them to have, and then telling them it was fine. That's what they do across the board. But they want to turn it into a race issue. Fine, if that gets attention to it. You know, I finally agree with Michael Moore. It is genocide. But what about the 40% of people that are there that are white or Hispanic? Oh, it's when 60% are black, it's genocide. So then I don't agree with Moore. Is it genocide if it was 60% white in the town? It's an attack on us. And folks, there is social engineering going on through the water. They make jokes about it, Dr. Strangelove. It's really going on, ladies and gentlemen. It's really happening. They admit fluoride's doing all this. And coming up, Dr. Gribb's going to be in the studio to talk about that, how it affects fertility, and more. He's going to be with us for a little bit of this segment and the next segment, and then Mr. Steele's going to leave us. I want to get him up every few months just to talk about news. In fact, I want to get him up next week if he can do it, just to get into false flags itself, some of his CIA stories they can get into with us. I want to go to a few more calls right now, but I cannot stress enough to you that we've reached an event horizon point, not just for this show, but for liberty-based media, period. If you continue to tell friends and family and neighbors and on your Facebook posts and Twitter about Infowars.com/show, if you continue to say, hey, you want the answers, it's here. People are ready to hear it now. We have tripled online audiences with audio and video feeds the last 3 months. Normally, it maybe doubles in a year if we're lucky. We've been growing exponential, tripling the last 3.5 months at a scary level. So expenses go up as well with bandwidth, so please support us financially by shopping at InfoWarsStore.com, but keep spreading the word. And Mr. Steele, I want to go to a few calls here in this segment and the next, but the few minutes we have left, the experience I'm having of our audience exploding and Chris Carter coming out and saying the new X-Files is based on Alex Jones. We reached out to him. He says he is his admirer, big listener. We're going to hook up. The fact that just myself as a ping, as a culture person, it's not me, but I'm saying, who Alex Jones is getting so big is an example of how the establishment's losing the info war. Do you agree with that statement?
I do agree with that statement. They are losing the info war. And what's happening, I mean, look at ABC. What's happening is they're not controlling everybody. So the national news media had witnesses on national television talking about 3 white paramilitary dressed men shooting up San Bernardino. And then the FEMA, whoever it is that's running the narrative, swoops in. Of course, the FBI is already there. And they stop that narrative. And too many American citizens don't notice the disconnect, okay? But it's happening more and more often. And so I think they are losing the narrative. And I think that if Texas were to sponsor a national conversation, I think we could actually mobilize most of the country into paying attention.
Well, we need to support the governor and his call for a con for real with the states. But I agree, host a summit about a con and discuss what the states would do there to generate. I mean, that's how you do it. We need a pre-convention.
Do a dry run. Absolutely. And that dry run will then define the thing. Because one of the problems that we have is that these Republican and Democratic debates are low-level idiocy. Not a single candidate can actually discuss the 10 high-level threats to humanity or the 12 core policy domains or why Latinos, women, blacks, and children are being screwed by the existing policies and by their planned policies. Not a single one of them has actually got a full employment plan for this country. So I think a pre-conference, a dry run of a constitutional convention.
Robert David Steele, stay there. We're going to come back and take a few phone calls. And there's the info war. If you are a PrisonPlanet.tv viewer watching the live feed or watching at Infowars.com/show, you can see the InfoWars News Center. And that is just one wing. We have 3 other rooms and a 4th being set up right now, crammed full of patriots, scanning the news, putting information on social media, running shows, getting clips together, producing reports, editing video, talking to investigative journalists, lining up Cy Hirsch, lining up Donald Trump, lining up Ted Cruz, lining up Rand Paul, just in here building real media and telling you what we think, not hiding our bias to promote liberty and freedom. Robert David Steele is our guest. RobertDavidSteele.com. He also has his other great news sites you can link through there. Let's go ahead and talk to Paul in Arizona, then Jim and others. Paul, you're on the air.
Hey, Alex, may God bless you. I have a question for Mr. Steele. We all know that Libya had a boatload of gold, and do we know where the gold is now after he's been assassinated?
I don't know, but I'm pretty sure we took it.
That's right. Every time there's a war and everything gets looted, no one asks where all the antiquities or the gold or the treasury money went. It's just default to not ask questions.
No, I mean, we ran out of gold, and there's very strong rumors that Tim Geithner, when he was at the Fed in New York, was actually selling false gold.
Tungsten.
Titanium covered with gold sheeting. I don't think Fort Knox has any gold in it. So I do believe that a lot of gold was stolen in 9/11 by prior arrangement, and I do believe that the Libyan gold was a major target of our attack.
All right. Sorry, go ahead, Paul.
I said I believe that too. Because he wanted to start the.
Well, I mean, we now have the State Department emails. Good to hear from you, Paul. I mean, we're just proving right again, just over and over again. And that's the thing. It's not that hard if you just study history. Let's go ahead and talk to Jim in Washington. You're on the air with our former CIA insider. Go ahead.
Hey, Alex, really appreciate your show. And Mr. Steele, I have a two-point question regarding Constitutional Convention. First of all, since our cheating culture is not obeying the Constitution now, what makes anyone think that a couple of more amendments are going to make any difference? And secondly, once a Constitutional Convention is started, it becomes an entity unto itself. And like the first one and only one that we've had was out of control. And since the elite have plans for a Constitutional Convention like this, how do you plan on controlling such
Absolutely.
an entity?
I've always been against it for those reasons. We're in such we're in such dangerous straits now. All I'm saying is that if it's led by patriots from the beginning, we can control it. We can have dry runs as well. And then we can sit there and, you know, try to actually fix the country and use it as a way to educate the public with leadership against the culture of corruption. But the caller's right. If we are a fallen society, maybe we're like Humpty Dumpty and can't be put back together again. Go ahead.
It comes back to state rights. I mean, first off, the Constitution has been undermined by some of these amendments. This whole electoral college thing is a huge mistake. In my view.
The 17th Amendment getting rid of the senators.
Exactly. And the 12th Amendment, the 14th Amendment.
The 16th to give us the IRS. It all happened in 1913 with the last con-con.
Right. Now, let me make the comment that
So how about a con-con to reverse the last con-con?
I'd actually like to have a con-con that is out of control with the public being out of control rather than a con-con that's out of control with the elites being out of control. I have more faith in the average American than I do in our elites.
I'll say this, desperate times mean desperate means. They're ignoring it all anyways. I just say throw it all into hell and let God sort it out.
Let's have a national conversation.
And I've never agreed with this, and I'm not sure I completely do now. I'm just saying I really know Greg Abbott's for real. We're already dying on the table here. I don't know what else we can do. But Mr. Steele, great debate. Jim, great points, Jim. Thank you so much. I hear you. I totally understand your points, and I'm looking at both. Mr. Steele, thank you so much.
My pleasure, Alex. Bye-bye.
Clean, pure drinking water. You can't survive without it. But where do you get it? Alexa Pure Pro is a brand new, groundbreaking, gravity-fed water filtration system that is like no other. The Alexa Pure Pro transforms water from virtually any fresh source into clean, healthy drinking water, pairing the unprecedented superfiltration power of an all-new gravity block core with a hybrid chromatic shell. It removes up to 99.999% of impurities, including bacteria, viruses, fluoride, disinfectants, volatile organic contaminants, and hormones. Filter capacity up to 5,000 gallons. Stainless steel construction, easy assembly, low maintenance. Replacement filters are simple to install. And now, as part of an exclusive limited time introductory offer, you can save $20 off the retail price and get free shipping. This is a limited time offer, so order your unit today and receive free shipping and $20 off. Go to InfoWarsStore.com or call 888-253-3139.